Hello students and welcome again to Legacy IAS Academy. So we are analyzing the mains paper, mains 2024, which has been concluded. We have already done Sociology Optional Paper 1. Now we will start with Sociology Optional Paper 2. So the first paper which you saw was majorly on the expected lines, a lot of static questions. Some of the questions were dynamic and application based in nature, but with a proper and thorough understanding of the entire classes that we have done, we are doing, and the notes and everything, it should be very simple for you to solve all the questions in fact. And anyhow, in optional, you have the options to leave as well. So now let's come on to optional paper 2. Now, optional paper 2 of sociology is also not that difficult. It is again of simple, or you can say easy to medium level. Easy to medium level. As far as paper 1 was concerned, you can classify it as an easy paper. All right, for any serious aspirant, it is going to be an easy paper. So let's get started with respect to paper 2. In paper 2 also, you will come across a lot of questions. Of course, you will have static questions. You will have dynamic questions related to current affairs and stuff. At the same time, you will find application-based questions as well. Okay, and in dynamic, as I said, it need not necessarily be with respect to current affairs of this particular year, but it can be with respect to how the situation has been, how the trend is changing over the past few years. So let's get started. Question 1, which is about short notes. Question 1 and question 5 are compulsory. They will have 5 short notes each. All of them you have to write. So what is the first one? The first one says, what according to you are the factors responsible for the continuance of caste system in India? What are the factors responsible for the continuance of caste system in India? Now, they are not asking what led to the caste system. They are asking what are the factors which is making it continue the way it is, or maybe in a change form, but still caste system is present. So what can be the factor? The very first things you have to discuss these factors. You have to explain these factors. The very first thing can be religious legitimization. There is religious legitimization. The moment there is religious legitimization, it is very difficult to go against that religious legitimization. That is one thing. So religious legitimization, right? Then there is also a concept of endogamy, right? You are working, getting married in your own clan, you are getting married in your own caste, community, so on and so forth. So there is no much intermingling and no much dilution of that system. That is again thing. Again, even caste ties, if you look at from the functionalist perspective, caste ties also are economic ties, right? See, in villages and all where the caste system was more prevalent and is more prevalent, what happens is, if you need something, where do you go? You go to the person belonging to the same caste. They will be more willing, and you will get help in a easier manner as compared to you if you go to some other caste community's house. That is because that caste is one thing that is binding the group of people. So that is again the thing. Again, you have political exploitation. Political exploitation in the sense that politics is being played with respect to caste, which again, they want an existence of this caste discrimination so that they can milk that caste discrimination for their own benefits. So these, among others, are the reason why there is still continuation of caste system in some sorts, some way similar, and in some different ways also, but it still persists. Okay, so again, a very straightforward question. Understand, in paper 2, in the initial topics, caste is one of the most important topic in your sociology paper 2. Discuss the changes taking place in the industrial class structure in India. So again, when you talk about India, paper 2 also had a lot of questions specifically focusing on India, and paper 1 had a lot of questions focusing on India, even though paper 1 is of Western sociological thought. And in paper 2, of course, everything majorly will be Indian only, but you can utilize paper 1 theory in paper 2. I hope that is clear. So discuss the changes taking place in the industrial class structure in India. So what are the changes that is taking place? There is more increased, you can say, unorganized sector, more contractual workers. All these things are happening. at the same time diminished power. Why the diminished power? Because you will not find more of trade unions again, which was earlier good presence, because if who will fight for the laborers? The trade unions. Now the trade unions are not there. In fact, you can mention one thing: the new labor codes that are out, one of the code actually dilutes the provision of formation of trade unions as well as the provision to call out strikes. So because of that, there is diminished power. When there is diminished power, there will be more inequality, right? There will be more stratification, right? So all these things will be happening, the changes taking place in the industrial class structure in India. Plus, this stratification need not necessarily be economic stratification, but it can also be what? It can be your skill-based stratification, which person has which skill and is under, let's say, which particular job, white collar job, blue collar job, so on and so forth. Now Karl Marx, if you look at the structure, you can come up with theories, you can come up with Marxist theory, but that Marxist theory may not be applicable. What Marxist theory is? Haves and have-nots. These are the two different bifurcation. But Weber's theory may apply better in the Indian agrarian class structure. Or you can try to apply this also, then criticize this and mention this also. So you are talking about agrarian, so we won't go to white collar and service sector, etc. But even in agrarian, we are talking about the class structure. So the class will consist of, how is a class different? One class is superior than the other. It is basically on economic factors. So Marxist theory fits here perfectly. But Weber will say, yes, economy is one reason. But if someone is of the higher caste, their total power may be different than the power of the other caste. So again, the class would also not just be two, but there will be multiple classes. So this is how you can address this particular question with the help of these two theories of paper 1 as well. Question first C. Is patriarchy a key to understanding different forms of inequalities in Indian society? So is patriarchy the key to understanding what are the different kinds of inequality? There can be gender inequality, caste inequality, class inequality, economic inequality, ownership inequality, all that thing will be there. And yes, patriarchy plays a very important role. If you look at gender inequality, this is the classical definition of the existence of gender inequality is patriarchy, but it just doesn't stop here. Look at the economic inequality, right? Economic inequality, who owns the forces of production? Majorly it is the male. Not just that, here you can give a case study of Haryana, wherein, for example, Marx says whoever owns the forces of production will dominate. In Haryana, the situation is a lot of female also own the land. But the thing is, Marx is not just talking about theoretical ownership, but practical ownership as well. So theoretically, even though the female is owning, practical decision making, etc., is still done by the males. So effectively, practically, it is the males who are owning it. That is why the economic inequality is also emanating from what? It is again emanating from the patriarchy. Then you have sexual division of labor. Now this is also unequal, right? Again coming from patriarchy. Yes, so all these things you can talk about. However, there may be some inequality which need not necessarily be due to patriarchy. You can probably talk about Sanskritization or Westernization. That can be an example wherein different peoples are at different levels and they try to achieve upward mobility to get up to a higher caste or a higher class to reduce the inequality, which may not necessarily be due to patriarchy, but it does have a major role to play, as we can see over here. Question 1D. Do you think that family bonds are being affected by changing kinship patterns in India? So here in this question, you should know what is a kinship pattern. Kinship pattern, see, there are marriages, then marriages, after marriages there will be children. So that's a kinship system that has started. Now this kinship, because of this kinship system, do you think that the family bonds are being affected? We need to understand that. So what different kinds of kinship patterns, kinship system, marriages, family, all these things are a part of kinship system. So now you find prevalence of nuclear family. So when nuclear family is there, means the husband wife are living now separately from their parents, right? So there is already a disconnect, there is already the breakage of this bond. So has that been affected or not? Yes, that has been affected. You will mention that. But the thing is, even though they are living separately, so practically they are living separately, but when you talk about functionally they are still together. How you can say that? Whenever there is a festival, these people are going to visit their home. Whenever there is a ritual, they will visit their home. Wherever there is an emergency, they will visit their home. Whenever there is a need, monetary need, etc., they are still imparting the functions to their family. Hence the bond may practically be broken, but functionally it still exists to certain extent, is what we are going to mention over here. I hope that is clear. One more thing that you can add is, since there is a prevalence of this nuclear family itself can going forward convert into a joint family. Parents, husband, wife, they have a children, and then they get married and they have children, and suddenly the family has 3 generations and can become a joint family in the future as well. And that is what we will mention in this entire question. Next, despite the efforts of the government, bonded labor still persists in India. Comment. I think comment. Yeah, discuss. So discuss is there. We have to, of course, mention the answers as well. Now, with respect to sociological perspective, why will the bonded labor still exist? It will still exist because of the structural factors, because if you apply Marxist theory, economic disparity is there. So since economic disparity is there, the ideas of the have-nots will prevail, and the ideas of the haves, the people who own the forces of production, that is the bourgeois, will prevail, right? Whereas the proletariat will be exploited. This is there. The structure is maintained of the society. You can also give a functionalist aspect of bonded labor. See, functionalist aspect can be found in anything. Functionalists will also talk about the functionalist aspect of a crime. So functionalist aspect of bonded labor, getting efficient, cheap labor for profits, etc. You can mention all that, because of which at the same time the implementation, the efforts would be there, the policies would be there, but inappropriate implementation. But make sure to use these sociological theory to address this particular reason of existence of bonded labor even after the government's efforts. I hope that is clear. Now, so as you see, all the 5 short notes that are there, they are all solvable, nothing out of the blue, out of the ordinary, something we have never heard of, nothing like that. They are simple and all can be easily done. Coming on to question number 2, question 2A. Asks about discuss Western and Indological perspectives on the study of Indian society. Okay, so both the perspectives you have to discuss. Bring out the major aspects of G.S. Ghurye's contribution to Indological approach. This Indological approach is nothing but this Indological perspective, and G.S. Ghurye is a proponent of that. So first part of the answer, how do you address? Start by the Western perspective. See, Westerners, how have the Westerners looked at the Indian society? They have looked at in a very negative way. They have looked at everything in a negative way. The caste system, the rituals, the village republics, the presence of village, the presence of anything in India has been looked at in a very negative way. Why? Because their idea of European society was different, and here the things were completely different. So when they found things to be different, see, when I find things to be different, I can appreciate the difference, but I can also criticize the difference. If I like football, someone else likes cricket, I can say, what rubbish game do you like? But no, I can understand, oh, okay, maybe because of these reasons you like, and very good. I appreciate that as well. So there can be 2 different perspectives, but there have always been the concept of the Westerners having the thought of racial supremacy over the Asians, over Indians, right? So they have looked at everything in a negative manner because they were rooted in the European philosophy, European sociological thought processes, as a result of which these negative issues. Now, the Indological perspective, which is propounded by G.S. Ghurye actually tries to answer these Western perspective and say that why it is like this in India and why it should be, how it is good, and how we should actually study our Indian society. See, the major difference is Westerners are going to study with the help of Western philosophies. Indologists will say, yeah, you are studying Indian society. How can you study Indian society with respect to the textbooks, the thoughts, and everything that is of the Western society? No, you can't. You have to study from the Indian perspective. That is why you have to study the indigenous scriptures, writings, etc. in order to study the Indian society. And this, the study of Indian society with the help of the indigenous scriptures and writings, etc., is the Indological approach, whose main proponent was G.S. Ghurye. So what is his contribution? You have to write about his couple of works and what has he done, how he has responded to the Westerners with his Indological perspective and given a different perspective and picture of the Indian society as a response to the Western thought, is what are we going to write here. Okay. Question 2b. What are the definitional problems involved in identifying tribes in India? Discuss the main problems of tribal development of India in India. So there are two aspects to this. The first aspect talks about the definitional problem. Now, why does the definitional problem exist? Because the tribals that are there, they are not concentrated in one particular region. They are not homogeneous, they are heterogeneous. They have different rituals, customs, economy, different concept of society, etc., etc., different levels of integration. Because of that, you cannot come up with a one single definition. You cannot say people living in this part of the country are tribals, people living in the village only are tribe. Nothing like that. You can't say that, you can't do that. People who are doing this business or that particular economic activity are tribals. No, because they are doing various other activities also, because they are heterogeneous in nature. Because of being heterogeneous in nature, there is an issue of the definition of the tribals in India, right? So that is what that is what the definitional problem is. Now we have to discuss the main problems of tribal development. What is the main problem of tribal development? First things first, they have faced land alienation. The land alienation is there. Now land for them is not just the land in the sense which would mean for a capitalist or for the modern urban society, right? For them land, they say jad jangal zameen, right? Everything living, dying, every day-to-day thing, everything happens here. So this land is not just land, but their livelihood, their life, their food, clothing, shelter, everything is the land. So when you alienate them with respect to the land, they feel completely alienated. So this is one big problem. Then, of course, there will be cultural alienation. There is no or less amount of integration, or there will be isolation. So these are the issues in front of them. Mention them and quickly give solutions to this and end your answer. Now, next. What according to Andre Bete are the basis of agrarian class structure in India? Analyze the basis of agrarian class structure in India. Now understand, Andre Bete's perspective is sort of similar to that of Weber in the sense that if I have to talk about agrarian class structure in India, what will Marxists say? What will be the perspective of Marx? Be it agrarian class structure, industrial class structure, it is divided into two. It is divided into two because with respect to haves and have-nots, who owns the forces of production, who do not. That is what will happen. But Weber, what he does, he does not reject this, he accepts this, but says there are other reasons also. For example, the caste situation, the social status, etc. Andre Bete is also similar and says that it is not just the economic factor, but also the social status, the social power, the caste hierarchy. All these factors are the basis of the agrarian class structure in India. So as per Marx, if you are economically superior, then you will be higher class. than the one who is economically inferior. Andre Bete says no, not necessarily. You can be economically superior but of the lower caste. Someone would not be that superior economically but of the higher caste. So the power or the class where they lie, the hierarchy where they are situated will be a combination of these factors, and that together is going to decide. So this is how we approach this question, mention all these reasons for it and answer the particular question. Okay, economic superstructure, then you have caste, then you have relations of production, etc., etc., which is going to define the agrarian class structure. Coming on to question 3a, why is the study of marriage important in sociology? Because that is the beginning of a new family, you can say, another family or an extension of the already existing family, and family is what? Is an institution. Marriage is also an institution. A lot of things emanate from that, hence it is very important to study marriage in sociology. Second part is analyze the implication of changing marriage patterns for Indian society. First you need to know what are the changing marriage patterns. What are the changing marriage patterns? For example, now you will have more of intercaste marriages, but still there are intra-caste also, but there is an increase in intercaste marriage. You will find inter-religion marriage also. In fact, this question was there in GS paper 1 under society, that intercaste marriages of same economic status has increased, but inter-religion marriage has still not increased to that extent, but still this is also present at the same time, right? So you have this. Now the question is analyze the implications of changing marriage patterns. So if earlier there were less intercaste marriages, now there are more intercaste marriages, what can be the implication? The implication can be possibility of Sanskritization, mobility, that is social mobility. It can be upward social mobility, downward social mobility. All these can be the we can say implications of changing marriage pattern in Indian society. All right, I hope that is absolutely clear. Now question 3b, do you think that the constitutional provisions for women have led to their upliftment? Give reasons for your answer. Now this is a question wherein you cannot completely deny it. At the same time, you cannot say everything is hunky-dory, amazing, there is no need for any other improvement or change or improvisation or enhancement or addition, right? So what you have to do is you have to majorly agree, not necessarily majorly, it can be 50-50, it can be less and more, anyway. But the idea is, of course, you have to basically talk about the constitutional provisions and how it has led to the upliftment of the women. That will be your reasons. But then why it is still not achieved to the desired level, you give reasons for that, provide solution, and then conclude your answer. So this is going to be the framework of this particular answer. I hope this is clear. Now, education is the key to social development. Elucidate. Absolutely correct. See, there are agents of social change. Technology is an agent of social change. Education is an agent of social change. So social change is in social development will also happen. Now change necessarily need not be for the development, but it can be for development also. So any factor which is an agent of social change can also be the agent for or a key for social development. So you have to mention about how education can lead to social development. You need to elucidate upon that. So if education is there, education will lead to social upward mobility, and this mobility does not happen only for the individual who is educated, but for the entire family and the community. Social status will increase, right, of the entire community, and all can be uplifted if people in their community are getting educated. So this is how the social development will take place. However, this development is still very uneven because of uneven access to education, which can be addressed with the likes of right to education, etc. Question 4a, how do religious communities contribute to the cultural diversity of India? Basically, this is focusing on the major religions of India and other religions and rituals, things which are present. See, what happens is, in India, see, there are major religions, there are different religions, there are people of different religions. Now, you will see, actually, if you look at it, an Indian Muslim would be culturally more close to an Indian Hindu than they would be to, let's say, a Muslim from Saudi Arabia. Right? What am I saying here? I am saying here in Saudi Arabia there is a Muslim person, there are Muslim communities, they will have some rituals, etc. In India there are Muslims, right? And of course there are Hindus. And you can say Christians, Sikhs, whatever religion you talk about. Now, you will see when it comes to a lot of cultural things. So what happens is, an Indian Muslim would be more similar to an Indian Hindu, to an Indian Christian, to an Indian Sikh than they are close to a Saudi Arabian Muslim with respect to the cultural aspect. But at the same time, it will not be exact. There will be slight changes depending upon the tenets of the religion, but it would be somewhat similar also. So what, and how has this happened? Because in the same region, right? So now I am saying it is same. So how can I say that there is cultural diversity because of the religious communities? That is because a particular community, let's say, follows X ritual or something. There is another community which follows Y. They are completely distinct. Over a time, what happens is, people would follow exclusively X, people would follow exclusively Y. These two will get combined and come up with a Z. So if these two communities were separate, you will have just two different cultural identities, two different cultural diversity. But when they came together, they gave rise to a third one as well. So when you have multiple religious communities, there will be a lot of permutation, combination, and the growth in cultural diversity. This is how it happens. So we'll explain this with the help of certain examples, with the help of example of marriages, the rituals that are similar, not followed in other parts of the world of the same religion, but in India, because of the cultural diversity that is created because of the amalgamation of different religions in India. Question 4b, what do you understand by decentralization of power? So here it is very clear, the question itself is asking the definition. So whenever the question itself asks a definition or asks you to define or asks you directly a terminology, what you can do is you can directly start your introduction with the help of the definition itself. In other questions, start with certain other things, but when the question directly answers, you can definitely start with the definition itself. Okay. So define what is decentralization, give example. Next question is, what is the role, what is its role in strengthening the roots of democracy in India? So what role does it play? Grassroots participation, effective governance, bottoms up approach, grassroots development, awareness, empowerment at the grassroots level. All these things are happening because of which the democracy gets strengthened. Now, you can also give a flip side of that, but that will just be a small part of it, not a major part of it. Question 4c, what are the different forms of untouchability still practiced in India? Discuss with suitable illustrations. So basically here you have to give certain examples. You have to give certain examples and explain the different kinds of untouchability that is there. So first things first, social segregation. In any social gathering, there are segregations of people based on the caste. There is also a concept called as two-tumbler system. Two-tumbler system is basically having different utensils. And not just at homes. You can see that even at commercial places. And you can write this example. One example can be a very simple example which a lot of you would have already seen, the tea stalls. Now, see, tea stalls use teacups. Now the teacups can either be paper teacups or glass or steel teacups, right? So a particular tea stall should use just one kind of it, let's say just steel ones. But even if they are using the steel ones, they will have some amount of paper cups as well. And you will realize some of the people coming to the shop and asking specifically in the paper cups. Why? Untouchability. Because the other cup, that steel cup which is reusable, or the glass cup which is reusable, might have been used by someone, they don't know who they are, lower caste, this caste, that caste, right? And they don't want to use the same utensil for themselves also. So they will ask for a use and throw cup. This is nothing but a type of untouchability practice, not just in villages, in urban areas as well. Then there is housing discrimination, housing segregation. You will find concentration of low caste people at a particular region, and not rather an integration. That itself is nothing but a part of untouchability. What happens is, you are going to take a house on rent or buy, people say no, we won't give that house for this particular caste, so on and so forth. So in these kind of forms, give examples and explain how untouchability exists in these different forms of untouchability. Now, this was section A. Section A, again, on the expected lines, not much difficult questions. Even the application based questions are there, they are good enough, could be answered. This question, different forms, you should observe. Just by the observation, you can write it, explain it in sociological terms. All right, let's start with section B. Question 5th, about short notes. It is, examine with suitable examples the recent trends in the growth of urban settlements. So what has been the recent trends in growth of urban settlements? How it has been? There has been increase in let's say slums, increase in pre-urbanization, increase in and there is gentrification. Don't forget to mention this gentrification term. What is gentrification? What happens is, in urban area there would be a place wherein poor people are living, right? And maybe some amount of rich people are also there. Poor, very poor, extremely poor, and some amount of rich are there. Now, since rich has more and more money, they keep occupying the land. The moment they keep occupying the land, they will start holding more and more land. So let's say this is 1990s. In 2020, you will find what has happened? The demography with respect to class is completely changed. Now the rich own the majority of the region, the land, and the poor is sidelined. Gentrification, you can draw the diagram and write your answer and mention other things as well. Next, is there a connection between labor migration and informal sector? Justify your answer with reference to Indian society. Even if they don't write reference to Indian society, you have to give examples of Indian society in paper 2. However, you can of course use paper 1's theory as well. Okay, but they've of course specifically mentioned Indian society. Don't be surprised if tomorrow in paper 2 they ask with reference to Western society. Don't worry, apply it to Western society and answer. That's not a problem. Now, labor migration. Is there a link? Yes, there is a link. Why there is link? Especially if you look at push migration or even pull migration. Migration is happening because people do not have jobs, people do not have skills, people do not have XYZ things, because of which they do not have a job, they are not earning. They think that they can earn in the urban areas and they will earn more and send some money. Now when they come, generally the people who are migrating for the jobs are not very highly educated kind of people. There will be some, but majorly that is not the case. So they are having the skills and the education level which can only get them in minuscule jobs, which will majorly be in what? Unorganized sector. as a result of which unorganized or informal sector, as a result of which what? Labor migration is linked to informal sector, of course. Not 100%, but majority of it, right? So this is what you have to mention and give examples of different states where it is more prevalent, etc., etc. Now if the same migration, if you have talked about Indian migrating to Canada, they allow only educated people, graduate, postgraduate with experience, this, that, there is a proper score. That is not happening here, because in India we are free to move anywhere in the country, except for certain exceptions, but majorly we are free to move anywhere in the country and do any trade practice, unless until of course it's illegal. All the legal things we can do anywhere in the country, right? So there is no hindrance. You cannot just like that go to Canada. They will check your everything, and that means there will not be informalization because of your migration in Canada as such. But within India, when there is no restrictions, of course there will be. Question 5, see, are slums the manifestation of industrialization and urbanization in India? It will be a big yes. Don't write the word yes, but explain with the help of example. Again, it is sort of what the previous question was. It is on those lines as well. But at the same time, so industrialization, because of industrialization, what will happen? People are attracted to industrial areas, to the urban areas, and people from village also are coming over here. When they are coming over here, the land is less, people are increasing, because of which they live in close proximity, in small rooms. And what is that? That is nothing but the establishment of slums, right? So I hope this is absolutely clear, that it is the function of manifestation of industrialization and urbanization. Discuss the changing nature of political elites in India. So you need to talk about how the political elites were there earlier, right? How they are changing based on what, and how they are now. I hope that is absolutely clear. Now, earlier the political elites, see, if you look at the concept of political elites, the moment India became independent, majorly the political elites were from where? They were lawmakers, they were lawyers, they were educated lawyers, they were educated white collar people, right? Those were the politicians, those were the political elites. Now, do you think majority of them are like that? No. So the system has changed. Now, why? Because of economic power, muscle power, now the political elite are not necessarily intellectually more capable as it was the previously. Now it is different power that is ruling and governing. In fact, a report by ADR says that any politician who has high economic power and muscle power will be having higher chances of getting elected. So it's a direct correlation. This is how you talk about the changes that is happening. Last short note, what is your assessment about the recent farmers movement in India? So recent farmers movement have happened, like Tamil Nadu farmers have gone to Delhi and they have protested. There have been protests against the farm bills. So what is our assessment? So you need to assess this as a social movement, as the farmers movement as a social movement, how people were garnered for this, and what impact did it have in the Indian polity. And it actually was a successful one, because the government has taken back the farm bills. So conclusion was a positive one. However, it can come back again, but for the time being, it has been there. However, not all farm movements that have happened in the recent past has been successful. Okay. Coming on to question 6A. Discuss the major challenges related to women's reproductive health in India. What measures would you suggest to overcome the challenges? See, first things first is high amount of non-institutionalized deliveries, right? High amount of non-institutionalized deliveries means the deliveries are not even happening in the hospitals. It is happening outside hospitals. It is happening in the houses by midwives, untrained people, right, who are not trained for delivery, etc., leading to higher maternal mortality, may also lead to higher child mortality, right? But we are focused on reproductive health, so that is one thing. Plus economic power is also required to take care of yourself. That is another thing, right? So these are the various reasons you will be talking about. Plus there is gender inequality also, right? Gender inequality, and people are, let's say, trying to find out the sex of the child beforehand only. Now the moment they realize it's not a boy, it's a girl. Then female feticide again can be, difficult for the reproductive health of the women also. Abortion after abortion because the sex of the fetus is a female. So all that are the issues in India with respect to that. What measures can be suggested is more institutional deliveries, stricter, let's say, not just stricter laws, but its certainty of implementation of those laws with respect to sex discrimination of the child and feticide, etc. We can take in order to ensure the reproductive health. Not just that, inequality needs to be addressed so that proper healthcare facilities, it's not just during the delivery but during the entire process. First things first, there needs to be freedom of choice to even decide to start a family or not. That also should be given to the female, and then when that is decided, throughout the period there needs to be proper care and concern for the reproductive health of the female as well. Question 6b, what is sustainable development? Here you have to define and give example. How can sustainability be achieved in India where livelihood needs conflict with environmental protection? So you need livelihood, you have livelihood needs, but you also have a concern of environmental protection. So what do? So you have to create inclusive policies, which includes both the things. You have to have community engagement, right? You have to develop the consensus. You have to ensure that environment is not hampered for the livelihoods, but at the same time livelihood is also provided. There needs to be a proper balance which needs to maintain. These are the points we can discuss, and you have to give certain examples. Okay, see, because when a dam is being built, it is, of course, we understand people would be displaced, but then the dam is also going to provide water to millions of people, jobs and all, but at the same time water, which is a basic necessity. So should we not build the dams at all? We have to. But then should we not care about the people who are displaced? No, we have to. Should we not care about the forests or the trees that will be cut? We have to. So what we can do, replanting, additional planting, this, that, all those suggestions you will also have to mention over here. Question 6c, critically examines the relevance of development planning in India. See, development planning, first of all, need to understand why or what is the need of development planning. See, you would not need planning if you have unlimited resources. Planning is required because the resources are limited. That is point one. So India has limited resources. Land is limited, resources, natural resources are limited, right? That is one thing. Second, you have to achieve more in this less thing. That is why the development planning becomes ever so more important in the Indian context, and you then have to build on that and give Indian reasons with respect to Indian society as to why it is important. Now also mention about we have just 2.5% of the world's land and we have more than 18% of the world population. See the mismatch, right? Hence planning becomes more important. Also there is diversity, religious diversity, caste diversity, class diversity, so much of diversity, discrimination, unevenness, poverty, etc. As a result of which, what is required? Again, development planning is required, right? And how it can be helpful and how it can proceed, you will conclude with that. Question 7th A, analyze the trilogy between environmental movement, development and tribal identity. Sort of similar, the theme is similar, but the question is completely different. Environmental movement, which may hinder the development, right? Because of the concept of saving the environment. At the same time, there is tribal identity also. Okay, so in a region, if you're talking about, of course, the environment of the region is important to protect the trees, plants, animals, etc. At the same time, the development is also needed. At the same time, the tribals are also residing in this area. So all these three things are present together and all these three things are need to looked at. The question is, analyze the trilogy between these three. among these three. So how do you analyze? How to ensure this and this and this? First, we'll understand, if we ensure this, how can there be an issue with this? If we ensure this, how can there be an issue with these two? If we ensure this, how can there be an issue with these two? Right? And then finally, how do we ensure all the three go in sync? Question 7b, to what extent have the legal provisions, when they are specifically mentioning legal provision, be very clear to focus only on the legal provision. To what extent have the legal provisions been effective in curbing the violence against women in India? Give your arguments. So legal provisions, keep mentioning the legal provisions like the Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Harassment at Workplace Act, the She Campaign, etc. How they have helped. At the same time, mention about even after this, what is the rate of conviction against still the Me movement was there, in which so many people came out. Why? Because even though the law is there, they are so unequal or so discriminated and so powerless that they are not even aware of the law. Second, even if they are too, let's say, weak to utilize the law, incapable of doing that, etc., etc. So law alone is not, but its awareness, implementation and empowerment is necessary, is what you are going to mention. 7c, trace the social and historical origins of Dalit movements in modern India. In modern India. So we can trace it from Jyotiba Phule, Savitribai Phule, and how it started. Then talk about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, right? Then after independence, the Dalit Panthers, etc., etc. You have to mention this and trace the development that has happened in the Dalit movement. Question 8. Highlight the major contributions of the reform movements in pre-independent India. So here you have to mention the reform movements that have been there in pre-independent India. The anti-sati movement, the Remarriage Act, against the child marriage and all. So what were those movements and how that has helped, contributed, right, in the pre-independent India. So make sure to not give any post-independent movements. Okay, again a very factual and straightforward question. Question 8b, identify different forms of inequalities associated with agrarian social structure. So now see, agrarian social structure, how much importance it has been given. I think 3 questions, this is the 3rd questions that have been asked with respect to the agrarian social structure. Yeah, this is the 3rd question. So around 50-60 marks worth of questions have been asked with respect to the agrarian social structure. Okay, now what are the different inequalities? There will be caste-based inequalities, there will be class-based inequalities, there will be inequalities based on land ownership, there will be inequalities with respect to skills, with respect to job, etc., etc. These would be the inequalities associated with social structure in India. You have to discuss each one of them in detail. Now, the final question is, what are pressure groups? Discuss their role in decision making in democracy. So first part is simply the definition of pressure groups. You define what a pressure group is, what it does, give examples, and their role in decision making in democracy. So they influence the idea of the public, they influence the people, so that then people can ask the, when the people consensus, they can drive the people consensus based on which the government will have to take a particular decision. Not just that, at the same time, they can also act as a think tank. The government may invite them to give their opinion, etc. So this is how, either directly as working as a think tank or indirectly by influencing the people, they can influence, they will have a role in decision making in democracy through the government. See, the decision will not be made by them. They do not have the legal backing to take any decision, to come up with any rules, laws, regulations, anything like that. Absolutely not. That will be done by the government. But the pressure groups can influence the people, and when people are influenced, we are in a democracy. So if A lot of people are influenced. The government has to care for that because these are the people who will be voting for them. So then the decision will be made on that, based on that, or else the government themselves can invite them as a think tank and give their own side of the story and then take a decision accordingly. So in this manner, the pressure groups are going to, of course, have a role to play in decision making in a democracy. In fact, in democracy, they can. If it's an authoritarian rule, then pressure group may not be entertained at all, right? So pressure groups are actually a feature of the democratic nation. Can be present in other forms of government as well, but a classical feature of the democratic government. All right. So this is all about Sociology Optional Paper 2. Again, very simple on the expected lines. Lot of weightage on the agrarian society. A lot of direct questions are there. Very less application based questions. Very less dynamic questions, and whatever they were also very straightforward and easily doable. So again, the level would be easy to medium. I hope people have done exceptionally well in this. I wish you all the best. People who are going to give exams in the future, let's take learning from this and become better. Thank you so much for tuning into Legacy IAS Academy. Right, stay tuned for more such information lectures. Thank you.